Hey guys, Toby Morrison here, and on the other end of the interview is B from London. Hey
Hi.
B. Who's actually originally from Norway, for anyone who is interested in knowing that, because we've got a lot of Norwegian members in the program too, so that's kind of cool. Now, this interview is all about recovering from chronic fatigue syndrome, and for people who are basically going through a chronic illness. And so this is really to share inspiration, to share hope, and basically to share a story of someone who has improved their life dramatically. Not to say it in the sense of an overnight cure, but just in the sense of dramatically shifted from suffering and struggling and not knowing what to do to then basically living life again and just enjoying it. Which was once probably felt not possible for you, B.
Yeah.
And so, just to paint the picture for people, kind of just share a little bit about your backstory before you kind of knew that you were going through chronic fatigue syndrome, and what was that like?
So back in 2015, so 5 years ago now, so I was living in London, working in my dream job for this small environmental organisation, which was essentially a startup. So I was working quite a lot and, making the most of living in London. So being busy, seeing friends, and running a lot, going to yoga. And then gradually I realised I really struggled to do things that I used to be able to do just fine, like things like running. I used to run like half marathons, and I would like try to go for a run in the park and just feel super nauseous. And particularly I think it was it was a very gradual process for me. So I definitely just didn't realize that it probably wasn't normal to go to like a day festival to listen to some music and literally just fall asleep on the grass. And I just didn't think about it, because I was just like, oh, like I'm doing a lot, so I'm tired, it's normal. And then gradually I was like, the more things I had to cancel because I felt unwell, I realized, well, this isn't really maybe normal anymore. And then gradually I struggled to go to work and do those things, and then started going to the doctor eventually.
Yeah. And what were some of the main symptoms? Like obviously like exhaustion and you kind of slowly not being able to do the things that you once were able to do with ease. But like, what were some of the signs? We spoke about this just before we jumped on this call about you jumping on Instagram trying to find other people who are related, who you could relate to and see if anyone else is experiencing this. But for the people who are watching right now, seeing you looking, really healthy and well, it might not feel real for them that you even went through what they're going through. So what were some of the things that you felt back then, which is probably what a lot of people who are watching this right now, who, what are they?
Yeah, so it was, exhaustion is a big one, and the exhaustion just didn't go away. He just that was a big one for me. And then headaches and kind of brain foggery. Not like I would try to concentrate on something at work and I just couldn't do it. Like my brain just wouldn't do it. And I'd feel nauseous a lot. I'm even trying to remember now because it just feels like a long time ago.
Yeah.
Um,
And you don't
yeah,
tend
and then like muscle pains as well. So like if I went for a walk, or even tried to like exercise, I would just like my muscles would be so painful afterwards. Yeah.
So with that, with that exhaustion, when you said like it was like nothing fixed it, good sleep, rest didn't really restore it. It didn't matter kind of what you did, you just never really felt energized.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's so common, and especially the brain fog. I'm sure like everyone who's watching it's like, yep, I know exactly what she's talking about.
Yeah. And at the time I was like, because one thing I think I could kind of understand that obviously in your physical body, like you can understand that if you're unwell, you'd struggle to say go running or even go for like a proper walk. But then for me, it was because I was working using my brain, right? Like, and the fact that I just couldn't be stationary and just like look at a screen, it just seemed like incomprehensible that could actually be a thing.
Yeah. And what was it like the experience going to the doctors, was it useful, or did you kind of go on the merry-go-round that a lot of people do go on, and kind of, yeah, did?
Yeah, so when I first came to the doctors, they just said, "Oh, it's stress and anxiety. You know, you have quite a lot going on in your life. It's just stress and anxiety." And I said, of course I'm stressed and anxious, but I'm stressed and anxious because I feel really sick and no one's taking me seriously. So that's obviously a very stressful thing. So that was the first thing they tried to say. And then, they did lots of different tests and everything just came back normal. And I would be the one pushing for the test. They just they didn't even want to really test for stuff. I would then, look at things and be like, can you test me for this? Because I wanted to, get some answers.
Wow. And, you know, was it kind of, how it was like a progressive experience for you? Um, was it like, okay, this is what's going on for me, I need to cut back? Or did your kind of body just stop you in its tracks and just be like, all right, enough's enough, I need to rest and, basically look after myself?
I think a bit of a mix. Like I remember this was like, yeah, like late August 2015, just for my birthday actually, and I had tried to go for a run in the park, and I would just like felt like I was going to throw up, and I just thought this isn't normal, and that's kind of when I tried to pull back a bit, and I was meant to go to a work trip to Brazil, and I just cancelled it and was like, I can't do that. So that's kind of when my body did stop me, but then I tried to kind of pull back, and I thought I was pulling back, but my idea of like resting would be like, okay, well, I can't go for a run anymore, so instead I'm going to go for like an hour-long walk really fast.
I was just going to say, that was my next question, is like, how hard was it to pull back? Like, I feel like
So hard. It took me a really long time. Like I think when I really learned like what my baseline was after I joined CFS Health. And even after that, it took me a while to actually accept where I was at.
yeah.
So probably about from when I got sick until I actually had like a good baseline of like all areas, both like cognitive and physical and all that, took probably about a year.
Yeah, which is kind of, some people think like it's just going to happen overnight, they're just going to get it, but it's a trial and error thing, and it's about, I guess, figuring out, where you're at the current situation, because it's always changing as well, right? Did you experience, like, was it hard emotionally? This is kind of a stupid question, but like, how hard was it emotionally for you? Like, especially at that starting point, going from high achieving, very talented person to then just not being able to do, what you want to do. Like, what?
Yeah, it was super hard. Like I think that's the thing, is like the emotional component is so difficult. And I think there were obviously stages to that too. Like the first like maybe 6 months or so, I was definitely in like complete denial about like where I was at. And also what didn't help was that the doctors, at least here, they tell you to not decondition. So they're like, make sure you don't rest too much because then you'll decondition. And me being the high achiever that I was like, well, that's the last thing I want to do. So and I wasn't listening at all to my body. So I would be like, okay, well, my emails popped up. I'd be like, okay, well, they tell me not to decondition. So even though this walk is making me feel shaky and nauseous and so unwell, and I'm not sure I'm going to actually make it home, I'm going to do it because they tell me not to decondition. So I wasn't, listening. I was just kind of pushing, also because I just didn't want to accept it, right? So I would do things like, oh, like I had a trip booked to Paris, and I'd be like, well, in like a month I can do it. So let's just go then. And I was just like, complete denial about it because it was so emotionally hard to accept that I couldn't do the things that I thought I could do or that I wanted to do and that people around me were doing.
Yeah, and probably expected you to do as well. People around you probably have that expectation, like, oh, come on, you'll be right.
Yeah.
It was a big shift for you, because I remember when you joined the program and there was this like huge shift for you in every area of your life. It was almost like this, like, all right, this is what it is. This is where I'm at. And
Yeah.
I'm almost going to change my entire life right now so I can start here down the bottom and build back up again. Is that true for you? That's what I saw on the outside. Is that kind of what it felt like for you too?
Yeah, definitely. I think just so many I'm such a words person. So like some of the phrases that we had in like the recovery program just really helped me, like even just like health first, just like that's a very basic thing. And I wasn't actually, as much as I thought I was pulling back, I wasn't putting health first, like me pushing myself to go to Paris because my friend really expected me to go and I wanted to go. That's not putting health first when you're like really sick, you know, and doing things like that. So I then got to a point where I was like, health first actually means, the thing that really helped me as well was to remembering that it wasn't, pulling back wasn't a permanent thing. Like pulling really far back was a temporary thing that would help me get better and then be able to do those things without being in pain. So I would then get really strict and like, no, like going out to a restaurant, even if your friend invites you, that actually makes you feel really sick right now. So you're just not doing that. It's just not in like your vocabulary right now. But like the key thing for me to like accept it was like right now. So I think probably for about a year, if someone was like, let's go out for dinner, I'd be like, I can't go out for dinner. And it wasn't even like a should I, maybe I could. It was just like, nope, that's just not like possible. You can come here for dinner, but then halfway through dinner or several times through dinner, I'm going to go and rest and you can occupy yourself.
Yeah.
So like I did get really like, strict is the wrong word because that sounds really like negative and like I was like still pushing yourself in a negative way, but I just got very clear about my priorities, I think.
Yeah, and it sounds like you got clear on your boundaries at each period of time. So for you, that's where you're at, and that's the envelope of energy that you had to work with, and so you were kind of smart with that. So watching you from the outside, obviously through the program, it's been years ago now, but I do remember you often posting and sharing what was kind of working, your wins along the way, and they were small wins, like having your friends around for dinner and kind of moving and going out again and doing things. But they were big wins at the same time. Like they would have felt like big wins because you were feeling good doing them. It wasn't like the opposite where it was like you could still do stuff but you felt like shit all the time.
Yeah.
But it was, I noticed that change in you. It was just like you started to really celebrate those small wins. Was that something that you were conscious of? And what was that like through that process to change your whole perception on reality, basically? Because going from hero to zero and then starting over again is really challenging. But I really like what you said before, which was absolutely brilliant, which was right now, not forever, right now. Such a good message for everybody to hear.
Yeah, because I think that's the only way you can do it. Like if you think that, you're never going to go out to eat again and you're never going to go, see your friends again and you're never going to do this and that, then obviously you're going to want to push yourself to do it. But yeah, I think I was super conscious about celebrating my wins because obviously, like I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, like it's so hard to notice them if you're not conscious about it. Also because like our brains tend to notice negative things more than positive things. It's just how human beings are wired. So inevitably, like you otherwise notice, oh, I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that, because that's also your frame of reference is different. But yeah, I would like write down I started doing this like weekly wins kind of ritual every Saturday because I noticed like eventually during the week I kind of felt I got my own routine and everyone else were at work, so it was kind of all right. And then on weekends I would be like really feel like I was missing out. So every Saturday I would tell my like boyfriend at the time and now husband, be like, I'm getting nowhere, like I've made no progress, this is so frustrating, I'm just stuck. And then when I actually sat down to write it down, I'd be like, but there's so many wins this week, you just forget to notice them. And actually for a long time, I'm remembering now, I didn't do that every day. So every day I would write it down. Now I do it every week still. But yeah, every day I would sit down in the evening and go through, and it would be things like, did the dishes? Or like, and then I think the big thing in terms of the wins that really helped me as well was not just celebrating kind of what looks like progress, like having friends for dinner, but really celebrate when I didn't push myself, like when I actually rested enough, because that was what was like, I was in the mindset of like pushing myself to have friends over for dinner, for example. Like that wasn't that new to me, if that makes sense, because you're still using that kind of you know, that's still kind of easily recognizable as progress in a way. Whereas saying things, I said no to having friends over today because I was too exhausted and I knew that would be pushing myself too much. Like that would be the wins I'd celebrate even more, because that was the only way I could like teach myself that I'm doing the right thing by saying no. So like, I think that was like a really big one for me in like changing. So then, and the good thing was then everything was a win, because if I'd say yes to something, that was a win because I could do it. Even if sometimes obviously I push myself too, like every because you want to. But then if I said yes, I'm friends for dinner, that was a win. If I said no because I was too tired, that was also a win because I was listening. So literally almost everything I did, you could like flip it. So it felt like a win.
Amazing. Like when you said the word, you know, I was basically teaching myself a different way. What I was going to say something before that, which was you basically retrained your brain. You know, totally, you did. Like it was just like a total bit of retraining your brain to do things in a better way for you that worked and it felt good, and you know, basically put you on the path of recovery. What are I know it's hard. Like you've got so much wisdom, and by the way, if you're watching this, what's your Instagram for everyone to know, just to follow you?
So I'm trying to remember what my handle is. It's BEABOHSO. So Bia Boso.
Okay, cool. We'll put a little link down below, because Bee's Instagram is just full of wisdom. And the reason why we got Bee on today in this interview is because her posts are so good. And one of your posts recently really caught my eye. And when I read it, I thought, wow, I need to share this. And I shared it on our platforms. And I've shared a lot of your stuff lately. And you've just got so much wisdom, and you've got so much wisdom from your own experience, but the way in which you express it is just so simple and easy to digest, but also easy to apply. It just really made me want to do this interview with you, because you know your story needs to be heard, but also the message that you share in your learnings and your teachings and your wisdom is just absolutely brilliant. And so this leads into my next question, which is going to be hard to answer because we don't have all the time in the world. But like, what are some of the biggest key takeaways for you in your recovery that helped you the most? And like we've already spoken about one, which was flipping that switch in a way and just like basically doing life from a different way. But what are some other things that are tangible for people to be like, oh, okay, cool, so she did that?
Yeah, I think there's two things. One is actually like, it's kind of what we already talked about, but the 50% rule, I remember so well. I made like a board of like a kind of like a vision board where I put up like health first, 50% rule, and all the kind of little phrases from the recovery program with like inspiring photos. And that was a big one for me, because what I thought was like I was saying before, what I thought was pulling back, it wasn't actually pulling back. Like it wasn't reducing as much as I needed to. So, and my mindset was always like, okay, well, I want to be at my max, right? Which makes sense because your max is still so much lower than where you want to be. But then when you were talking about like, no, start by doing 50% less than what you think you can do. And I was like, that sounds like nothing. But it was only when I actually did that I started seeing progress. And what helped me is like thinking about it is like, whatever energy I'm not expanding, I'm like gifting it to my body instead so it can use it to get better. So I think that 50% rule is a big one. And then the other one was really learning how important my mind was. And I wrote about that on Instagram to say, like, it's not to say any of it is in your mind. Like physical symptoms are super real and they're not imagined at all. But what I really noticed, and I still notice it, is if my mind is like in overdrive and I'm thinking and I'm stressing and I'm worrying, it's obviously a very natural thing to be doing when you're feeling sick. If I would lie down to rest, but my mind would go, oh my God, you've never felt this sick. This is so scary. I don't know. Maybe this is going to last forever. And my mind was thinking a lot, but I was lying on the couch thinking I was resting. But then I wasn't actually in a restful mode. My body was still tense. My body wasn't like fully resting. So it's only when I started realizing that the thing that really made resting feel slightly restorative was actually doing like meditation and visualization and actually actively like doing good things in my mind. So that's like a really big one for me.
And that's something you speak about now as well. Like I've noticed in some of your posts, and that's why I think it's just so brilliant. Is, excuse me while my dog has a drink of water. Yeah, like the mind stuff is so important, and it's just so misconceived. Like it's not what people think it is. Like people think, oh, it's just positive thinking, or it's just like, you know, pretending that you're fine. No, it's like so the opposite of that. It's not pretending that you're fine at all. It's really going within your body, within yourself, and feeling everything, but just calming everything down so that you can exactly do what you said, which was rest and digest and just calm your nervous system down and just have a level playing field. Um, and no doubt, like that was a huge factor in your recovery and is for everybody as well. Like, you know, you kind of can't, hard to make progress when you're doing everything stressed, right?
Exactly. And I mean, I still do it. I still meditate like every day because it helps me so much.
Yeah, amazing. Cool. And anything else in particular? Like those are the two main things. And for anyone who's not in the online recovery program, like we have a few set rules, but one of them, especially when you're starting out, we have like an initial onboarding phase where you really do exactly what B said, is like 50% less than what you think you should do. And it sounds nuts, but it's just a really good way to ease into things and just avoid the push and crash cycle. Like, is that something you went through for a while, that boom and bust kind of cycle?
Definitely. So that's why the 50% rule really helped, because I would do the thing of like, oh, when I was feeling marginally better or just had something that I really wanted to do, I would just do it and then I would crash. And then I would crash for a really long time. So if I was doing something, say like every weekend, I would see a friend that I wanted to see, but then I would crash for essentially like a week. And by the next weekend, I might feel a bit better. So I'd see another friend because I wanted to. And then I'd keep doing that. And sometimes I do it kind of every day. So you're just constantly pushing and crashing. So yeah, stepping back really helped. And then the other thing actually was to also get stop pushing and crashing like cognitively. By which I mean, like, one thing was like I would stop, pushing myself to go for like walks that I couldn't do, or stand up for too long and that kind of stuff. But the big thing was also just like not being on screens for too long, because that was also like I would push and crash by, say, obviously it's really hard, especially when you're in pain, to just be in silence and sit with it, right? So you'd want to distract yourself by like, I'd want to distract myself by watching something or scrolling online or talking to someone. But that's also obviously energy expanded, which took me a while to learn that it was equally important to stop pushing and crashing cognitively. I don't know if that phrasing makes sense, but
Yeah. And it's all progressional. When, obviously you studied out and you started to make progress. When was that? What was it like when you kind of got to that point? It's like, okay, I'm kind of feeling better, but then there's that fear of like, what do I do now? Like, do I do more? Do I push it? There's a stage where you steady out, you get the good foundation, which is what you did brilliantly, and then you get to that point. It's like, oh, I've got energy to use now, but what do I do? Kind of scary. You don't want to go back to the old you. You don't want to push and crash again. But then at the same time, you're ready to do stuff. So what was that like, and how did you navigate that? And was it progressional? Was it like, all right, you can do this, then you do that, and you stick to that for a while, then you do the next kind of phase, and now I think you're working 4 days a week. You're looking at working full time. You're looking at maybe you're running your own show at the moment. You're a journalist or a freelance writer, and you're looking to either work for the company or continue to expand your own business. So that's just amazing. Like, to get to there, and we should all just give you a clap right now, like a virtual online clap. I'm sure there's like thousands of people just like clapping in the background, like, wow, like, hello, you need your brain like that. I mean, like, even healthy people to do what you do is an amazing feat. So, like, there's a big gap there. There's the gap from like doing nothing to then being where you're at now, which is just so phenomenal and beautiful. Paint the picture for people of what it was like to get there.
Yeah, so I would always have like a goal I was working towards in some form, but I would like really break it down. And actually, to give the health system here some credit, they did also give me eventually onto the CFS kind of coach support, although different approach to CFS Health for sure, not as holistic, but she did help me work with goals.
Cool.
So always breaking down goals into, I think it was like 10 steps, but essentially it's all just super incremental. So say like my goal would be, really wanted to go to a yoga class, but then it would first be like at home, and a yoga class say was 60 minutes, right? That was my goal, to go to a 60-minute yoga class. But then where I was at would be like, I was at the time doing 10 minutes of really, really gentle yoga at home, essentially lying on the mat and like breathing and moving a tiny, tiny bit. So then it was like, okay, well, we're going to do 10 minutes and then we're going to do 12 minutes. And then we're going to do, work up like super gradually at home, how many minutes of yoga I could do. And then there were also obviously other components of going to yoga class, mainly just like getting there in the first place, which adds like things. So I would also then like separately like practice taking the tube. Like first I would like walk to the tube stop. That was one like step of the goal. And then maybe like next week I would like get onto the tube and take it one stop and one stop back without even leaving the tube. And then next time like 2 stops, and I would like build it up super gradually. And eventually I could like go to the yoga studio and I would just like go there for I think it was like half an hour meditation. So yeah, I'm not moving, I'm just sitting there, and then go home. And then next time I would go to like a really gentle yoga class that was meant for people that had like recovered from illness or whatever. So it was super gentle, and mainly it was old people and me. And then, I gradually build up. So it was so many steps. And obviously when I first set out the steps, it seems like you're never going to get to step 100 or whatever, which is like at the actual yoga class. But then you do get there in the end.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's funny, like all these small wins add up to big wins really quickly. Like it was only, when did you join the program? How long ago? It was years ago.
Spring 2016.
16, right?
I think.
So, yeah. So
Yeah.
2016, and now it's 2000. I was going to say 2019, but 2020. It's not that long. Like it's long, but it's not. To where you're at now, like it's pretty cool. So it feels like forever, but it's not.
Yeah, and I think what helped me as well was because I think originally I thought of myself like either I'm sick or I'm fully recovered. Whereas actually, like each step of the way, you feel, because I think like with the human mind, like we're mainly attuned to which direction we're going. So your absolute level of where you're at obviously does really matter for your quality of life. But even like when I felt like I could get the tube 2 stops and go home, that felt like the emotion of it felt amazing. Even though like now if I get the tube 2 stops and go home, I don't really feel anything, because it's just like, it's not exciting anymore. But, I think that's the important thing to remember as well, when it's not like you will only feel good about it when you get to step 100 or whatever. Like each step along the way actually feels like the emotion of it is still amazing.
Absolutely, it's your life. It's your living it, and again, this is why I've got you on this interview, because it's so important to share what you're sharing. It's like, you word it so well, but it's so true. It's like I never, when I was recovering from chronic fatigue syndrome, I never was like, I'm going to get to 100% recovery. Like that wasn't in my vocabulary. It's like, I'm just going to get better. I just want to improve where I'm at.
Yeah.
And then, and then looking back, it was 5%, 10%, 20%. And then, eventually it just adds on. And then eventually you start living life again. And sometimes you might not feel good. Other times you might feel better. And then and then you get to the place where you're fully functioning and living in the real world, and you're just doing what you want to do, and you don't think about it. It's just it's just like an afterthought. And so it's not like, I guess this is what I really want people at home to understand, is it's like, it's not it's not just you just wake up one day and you get there, after all your hard work, which is a bit of an illusion. And I'm sure, and you might be able to add to this, it's like when you get back into living life, you all of a sudden realize that, oh, here's just another set of challenges that I've got to deal with. They're just different challenges, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think I also like, it's still a process for me to also because I think when you're sick, you just think that like, oh, but if I had my health, life would be so easy. And of course, it's an amazing thing to have my health back. Like I'm so grateful for it every day. But then now I still think like, oh, but what do I want to do in my career? Like, oh, I have this work meeting and I'm nervous about it. Or like, oh, I need to write a speech for my friend's wedding and that's scary. Like there's always something. Um, but obviously what's really nice now is that all the things that I've learned in recovery still really help me, because all the mindset work that I've done, for example, like I still use that every day. It's just instead of applying it to getting back into taking the tube to yoga class, which was terrifying at the time because I was worried about crashing, because for a long time taking the tube just made me ill because I was pushing myself and all that stuff. So obviously then you're trying to overcome a fear that's like recovery related, but now I can apply the same kind of techniques or whatever to things like, oh, I have this meeting that I'm nervous about.
Amazing. So good. So good. What are you know, yeah, basically someone's at home struggling with this, they don't know what to do. Um, like what's this one basic thing that would help them at least get a little shift or a little change? What would you say to them if they're just at home, they don't know what to do, they're kind of stuck? Like, what's just one bit of advice when you were stuck? What was that one thing that kind of helped you turn around?
Well, there's one thing. I think that's the thing that's also difficult. That I definitely, when I joined the program, I thought there was one thing. I remember when I first spoke to you and I asked you, I was like, because I was looking for that like one silver bullet thing. So I was asking things like, but Toby, can I eat any sugar? Because I read that sugar is bad for you. So like, should I cut out sugar? Will that help? And you were just, and I remember this so specifically, and you were like, yeah, like you want to eat healthy, but like I'm not going to tell you not to have sugar, because then what if you really want a Ferrero Rocher and you're not going to have it because it's sugary? Like, I don't think that's helpful for you. And I was like, huh, okay. And I remember that comment so well, because that was what I was looking for, was like that one thing. But actually what it was doing, like, obviously every single day you make a million decisions or like not a million, but there's so many things you do every day, like when you wake up in the morning, like whether you look at your phone first thing or whether maybe you meditate instead, and like what you eat for breakfast. Like there's just so many things. And I think that was the big thing. It's like, yeah, just many different areas that add up rather than just like the one thing. Because I haven't got one thing. I feel like that was a trick question.
That's so awesome. And again, this is this is why I got you on, because you just speak so well. Like, I mean, everyone who we interview are awesome in their own unique way, but like, yeah, again, you've just got so much wisdom, and it's spot on. And it's funny that you mentioned that call. I mean, I've done so many calls over the years, but I was about to say, what did I say? But it doesn't surprise me that I said mention the Ferrero Rocher, because it's so true. It's like, why put that on you? Because that's what our minds do. We think we've got a problem. Oh, it's just if I just cut out all sugar, that's the problem. Or if I just find this one person or this one program or this one doctor, it's all gonna. But no, you said it beautifully. Like that is the answer. The answer is not finding the one answer. It's just being open to doing things differently on a holistic level, which will help you the most. To finish off with, yeah, you go.
Sorry, just one thing to add on that was just, I think that's also something that I think has been really important for me. It's like consistency is not perfection, which I've also written about on Instagram. And I think like, yes, if you're like, if you're eating Ferrero Rocher for all your meals, do you know what I mean? Your body is going to struggle because that much sugar isn't good for you. But like, so I did change I mean, I've always been eating healthy, but I did change my diet to a way that worked better for my body. But then I would also then have ice cream on a Saturday night if that's what I wanted, even though I knew like, oh, I shouldn't have ice cream because it's 7:30 and optimally for sleep is not to have sugar this late, and really I should have already stopped eating and da 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 da. But I wanted to eat some ice cream with my husband while watching Friends. Like, that's a good thing. It's fine. Like, that doesn't mean, you don't have, it's good to know the rules. And like, obviously if you're eating ice cream every evening at 9 p.m., you might not sleep that well. But once in a while, it's totally fine.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And again, you're just doing what's appropriate for you. You know,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with eating healthy and being super strict as long as it's working for you. But if you're finding that you're not improving and you're staying stuck, maybe we should have a look at changing that up. The amount of times I've seen people and helped people on their journey with switching that is huge, and the changes are just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Where are you at now? Like we spoke about this before our call, but like just to kind of what's the future look like for you? What are you kind of you mentioned these new challenges of writing speeches for weddings and having serious business meetings and things like that. Like you got married last year, you said? Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations, that's amazing.
Thank
Like
you.
another huge win that you probably thought wasn't possible a few years ago.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like that was one thing that last year that was like the big thing I was kind of working towards in terms of health. Like that would be my motivation was to, I really wanted to get my cardio up a little bit so that we could dance because I love dancing. So I was like, I want to be able to dance all night. And yeah, did lots of dancing. It's
Oh,
great.
nice. So good.
Yeah, so I'm kind of I'm working, trying to decide if I want to keep freelancing, which I did kind of as I've been recovering. I've been freelancing so that I could still work, but also like really put health first. So that's been really good. But now I really miss having a team. So I'm kind of thinking, to look for jobs. I'm kind of in that phase where I'm emerging back into kind of focusing a bit more on kind of purpose and work. So that's exciting. And I'm just finishing writing a novel, which I've said for a long time, but I'm like submitting it to publishers, to agents and stuff this year, which is very exciting.
So what are you up to, B? Oh, I'm just writing a novel, no big deal, just wow. Yeah, amazing.
And then I'm also volunteering for this creative writing organization that works with young kids on creative writing. So I do that as well once in a while,
So
which is great.
What's
Yeah.
what's the novel on? Like, what do we have a name for the title yet, or?
So at the moment, it's called My Unrecognizable Body, and it is about, surprise, surprise, a young woman who gets sick with chronic illness and tries to recover. So it's a fiction project, but
Brilliant.
obviously some autobiographical elements.
It's a number one seller. I think it might be actually. That will be. I don't think that's ever been done before properly. So and so many people relate to it. That's so cool. Two more things. First thing, what would you like to say to someone who feels like giving up, who's kind of at that point where they feel like they've tried everything, they've searched for the silver bullet, the answer? What kind of message would you like to leave them with tonight?
I think I would just say that keep going. I know it's super hard, but keep going, because even improving a tiny bit, like we were talking about before, does really make a big difference to your life. So it's not like all or nothing. That's, I think, a big one. And just, I think the big thing as well that we're told so much of the time that, life should be easy, but it's like life is hard, but that's fine because we are strong enough to deal with that. And sometimes it feels like we're not. And although, like, if you look at my Instagram and like look at me now, like I'm a super smiley person, I'm a very positive person in general. But the amount of times that I've cried the last years is like I would cry every day for a long time, and that's totally fine. Like now we can joke about it. Like my husband would be like, "Oh, I think we're out of your crying years. I haven't seen you cry in like months now. It's strange," because he would used to like, you know. So I think it's like knowing as well that even people that look like they're super happy and finding recovery, like if you look at my Instagram, probably looks like I find recovery really easy. If you just look at the photos, obviously if you read it, you see that, it's different than that. But I think that's the thing to remember as well, is that it is hard. Like recovery is really hard and it requires a lot of dedication, but it's totally worth it. Like it feels amazing when you start to make progress.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that honesty as well, because it's really important that people do see the hardship of it, that it's not this beautiful, lovely journey. It's a messy one, and it can be a hard one. Which brings me to my last question. Like, you joined the online recovery program years ago. things have changed now. So I guess it's a lot more engaged in the sense of like supporting and making sure that you're kind of, getting guided every step of the way. But you had the resilience and that accountability within yourself to really make those changes within yourself, which is really rare. Like, you're a self-starter, obviously. You're someone who can really have that accountability and can make sure you do everything right. But regardless, if someone's thinking about joining the program, what would you say to them? Because I know you did a post recently, which I absolutely loved. And I think it was about, making progress and just doing all the right things and not, having a holistic approach. But you said, you could have done it on your own, or you could have done it. You did decide to do it with the CFS Health Recovery Program. But if someone's thinking about, what would you say to them in terms of, is it valuable? Did it help you? Was it worth it?
I mean, for me, it was amazing and totally worth it, I think. But I remember something you said in one of your videos, which was that no one needs a program to get better. And I think what I've likened it to in my mind is like Olympic athletes. They all have coaches, right? But at the end of the day, they're the people that every day have to get up and do the running or the whatever exercise, whatever discipline they've decided to be an Olympian in. But if you're an Olympian, of course, it's helpful to have coaches, it's helpful to have massage therapists, it's helpful to have this and that, but they're not doing it for you, like you can't, like the only person, and obviously because we are not Olympic athletes, we're not going to have people like on our shoulder all the time telling us, what we need to be doing. So the only person that's like going through your life is you. So you have to make those decisions every day on on actually implementing things. But that said, as much as, you have your own power and you're the decision maker, having a coach or like a program, like a system in place that supports you is really helpful. And actually for me, a big thing as well was like, well, I've paid for this program now. So now I have to put health first because like I've invested in myself, and I think like that's another thing that I actually found really helpful is like, if you've signed up for something, at least like me having the personality I have, if I feel accountable to someone else as well, that actually is kind of helpful. And then the big thing is like community and connecting with other people that are in your situation. And that's been amazing. That's just invaluable, I think, because it helps you feel inspired by other people, but also feel like you can ask questions and, but share like the ups and the downs. So
yeah. It was cool to see you watch your journey through the inner circle too, of you sharing all your wins and your ups and downs and asking questions. And for anyone who doesn't know, part of the program we have a community where everyone kind of meets everyone from all around the world, and you made some awesome friends on that. I know you met Gemma Hanley, who's our resident mindset coach, and you guys met on Instagram. So, which is kind of ironic because we've been following you for ages since you joined the program, and then I saw a few of your posts the last kind of year, and I'm like, oh my god, like you are so spot on with what you're sharing with your experience. And I just want to know what you said before. It was like making decisions every day. It's a lot of people struggle who are watching this know what to do, but they struggle with implementing it. And if you're human, welcome to the club. Like we are all, everyone's the same, right? It's like, and so the reason why you're at where you're at and where you've come from to where you are now is because of the application and implementation of what you learned. Like full stop, right?
Yeah.
And so, I guess so it's so easy to know what to do, and sometimes we think we know what to do, but maybe that's not what we need to do at all. And so having that awareness and different perspective can sometimes be the shift that we all need. But your stories is phenomenal. Again, can you just read out your Instagram handle for anyone who's got Instagram? I highly recommend just following, Bee's journey and just kind of go back through all her posts and like read them properly, because there's some brilliant wisdom in there, and that's one of the main reasons why we got you on this interview tonight, is just because I mean even this interview is just phenomenal. So read out your
so it's BEABOHSO, so Beaboso.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. And I think like that's the other thing, like on my Instagram I would just write what I need to hear myself at the time usually, And then the nice thing is that you realize that other people resonate with where you're at, which is it's just really important, because it can be a really lonely journey if you don't know anyone else. And that actually really helps with implementations as well. Like on days where I would knew I needed to rest but didn't want to, I might write on Instagram like, today is my rest day, and now I've said it, so now I have to do it.
Yeah, cool. And yeah, looking forward to watching your journey unfold, and good luck with the book. I can't wait to buy a copy.
I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, please do. Yeah. I'd love to see it. That'd be amazing. And yeah, who knows? We might even get you on for a second round interview down the track once you're a famous author.
Sounds like a plan.
Hey, don't laugh now. It'll probably happen.
I mean, that's the thing though. Like, I don't completely the thing is, like, I love the writing, but of course, if it gets published, it's super exciting. But it's just like, that's the other thing I think that you learn. Like, once you've gone through something like CFS, you can just I feel like you can play a bit more with life, because you're like, the worst thing that happens is that no one wants to publish it. That's literally it. Like, it's fine.
Amazing. Yeah, got so much wisdom. Thank you so much on behalf of everyone. Everyone, I'm sure will write some amazing comments as well, just to thank you. But yeah, you're a brilliant person with a brilliant message. So I can't imagine what the book's going to do for people too. Really.
Well, it's felt really nice for me, because like I was saying before, like, our brains tends to focus the negative things. But even now I'm like, I forget. It's so easy. Like, it's not like something I think about, like how far I come. Like, I have to remind myself. And because it's so easy for me now to focus on like, oh, but like, work isn't necessarily exactly I want it to be right now, and I forget that, well, hang on, like, you used to not be able to go to the shop. So it's been actually really nice thing for me too.
Yeah, awesome, amazing, cool. Well, I'm sure we'll speak again.
Yes, please.
Thanks, B. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Toby.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.